Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod. What a difference a day makes. A looming deadline, a social media to-do, the Speaker of the House, and the President-elect on opposite sides of a massive funding bill.
He was texting back and forth with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, too.
Saying stop posting on X. What was he saying?
A government shutdown, possibly under the Christmas tree.
The name of the game is to pass the bill.
We hear from Republican Congressman Pete Sessions on the backroom fights to fund the USA.
As the co-chairman of DOGE, we want to make every single item stand on its own. Speaker Johnson added things that were extraneous to simply funding the government.
And from the corner offices to Mar-a-Lago, the pilgrimage route of America's CEOs with Yale professor Jeffrey Sonnenfeld.
The CEOs are not being paradoxical, they're being patriotic.
All that today, plus the markets breaking a winning streak after the Fed's cut and maybe slow it down strategy.
I don't think any of us are surprised at the hawkishness of it.
It is Thursday, December 19th, 2024. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Here we go, folks. Yesterday was a day for the markets. You've now seen the Dow down for 11 sessions in a row. That's the longest losing streak that we've seen since 1974. 10 sessions in a row, yes. It's the longest we've seen since 1974. If you take a look this morning after a drop.
The Dow on Wednesday fell 1,100 points, that 10th down day, 2.6%. The tech-heavy NASDAQ dropped way more than that, notching a 3.6% loss. The S&P index fell almost 3% as well. The major sell-off was prompted by a big newsy announcement from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell.
Today, the Federal Open Market Committee decided to take another step in reducing the degree of policy restraint by lowering our policy interest rate by a quarter percentage point. We've reduced our policy rate now by 100 basis points. We're significantly closer to neutral. At 4.3% and change, we believe policy is still meaningfully restrictive. But as for additional cuts, we're going to be looking for further progress on inflation, as well as continued strength in the labor market. I would say we are, though, in a new phase in the process, as I said. And that's just because we've reduced our policy rate by 100 basis points. We're significantly closer to neutral. We still think where we are is meaningfully restrictive. And I think from this point forward, it's appropriate to move cautiously and look for progress on inflation.
It wasn't the quarter-point rate cut that fueled investor concern. That we largely expected. It was Fed Chair Powell's signal that the central bank would keep rates higher in 2025. He foresees just 2 rate cuts in the year ahead. Now, let's get back to Joe, Becky, and Andrew.
We knew this was going to happen.
We knew it was going to happen.
You knew this was going to be the guidance.
He was far more focused on inflation than I think the market was expecting.
We've been really focused on it for.
I think he made the right call.
We've been talking about it constantly.
Yeah, I think he made the right call, and what he said made sense.
I don't think we can admit when the Fed is making a mistake. I think we give them way too much leeway, and it was clear to everyone that we were having on, even former Fed officials.
Esther George. I mean, she said don't even cut at all.
Yeah.
The NASDAQ had been up. Remember, the Dow for 9 days was down 3%. NASDAQ was up 3.5%. Well, yesterday it was down 3.5%, so it caught up lickety-split with where we are. 10-year now is almost at yearly highs. It's over. What did we show that? We really need
13 basis points yesterday.
And when you're cutting rates, if you're trying to cut rates, we've cut 100 basis points.
But
unless people are worried that you're screwing up, that the long rates don't always, behave. But it looks like, the inflation is not laid to rest at this point, and lead story in the Journal is maybe we are at neutral. Well, if they were so sure we were at restrictive all the time, yet the Journal points out, there's no way of measuring what neutral is. It's how the economy is behaving, and the economy has not been behaving like we're in restrictive mode.
No, because loans are plentiful,
Everything.
and businesses have had plenty of time
Bitcoin.
to do this.
What did you make of the move of Bitcoin? So Bitcoin comes under $100,000. I don't know where we are right this second.
Now.
But
I was trying to figure out how much.
We didn't know if it was going to hold 100 a week ago.
Too.
It's been moving so fast. It got up to 107. But hey, if they say that it's not going to be 4 or 5 cuts this year, the next year it's going to be 2, that immediately is going to be the knee-jerk reaction. But still over 100. What is it? 102? 102.4. We didn't know if we were going to hold 100 when it got up above there.
Right. The market has been so prepared for the Fed to continue cutting rates, has been expecting this for some time to come. And I think when Powell started talking yesterday about how they're so much more focused on inflation than on the labor market, that idea that the dual mandate's back out there, I don't think it came to a lot of watchers as a huge surprise, but obviously it came as a surprise to the market that has been wanting more cuts and thinking that those cuts in the dot plot was going to hold.
My word of the day is all of the above. Because the other day, the word of the day was buy the dip. So it's not. It can be a sentence. It can be a sentence. So it's all of the above. And it's if we have some residual inflation right now, and we're thinking about tariffs, and they even mentioned it. Yeah. I mean, we never heard Jay Powell complain about the IRA. Or the chips. I never heard him complain about any of that. Suddenly, he's worried about, now I'm going to put the factor of tariffs into my thinking. So that's the first time he actually looks at a policy he thinks might be bad when he didn't have a word to say about any of the other policies. Shutdown, showdown. That's not happening now. So that probably added some angst.
He did say inflation. They've been wrong on inflation. Their targets on inflation.
They were wrong before, and they're wrong again.
He said it's happened several years in a row now, where you get to the end of the road and their inflation targets have not been met.
Well, remember how wrong they were about transitory? Why should we be surprised that they're wrong?
That's what I mean. I don't think any of us are surprised at the hawkishness of it. I think we'd been talking for weeks on end about how they shouldn't cut. So I don't think anybody was surprised. I was happy to hear him focus on some of
And let's not
things.
overstate it. What are we down in the Dow now? 5% total?
Right.
I mean,
from the S&P, you're not even that. I was just looking at it. It's like 3.5% from the all-time high.
Let's talk about what's going on in Washington, because that may ultimately, we'll see, about weigh on, what happens in 2025 at this point. But let's talk about 2024. Chaos in Washington this morning. This is the government shutdown looks increasingly now likely. President-elect Trump joining Elon Musk and calling on Republicans to reject the bipartisan stopgap funding bill that had been put forward by House Speaker Mike Johnson. Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance putting out a statement urging politicians to pass a streamlined bill that doesn't give Democrats everything they want. They also urged lawmakers to raise the debt ceiling. That statement came after Elon Musk spent much of the day posting about the bill and urging Republicans to vote against it. He posted the following on X. He said, shutting down the government, which doesn't actually shut down critical functions, by the way, is infinitely better than passing a horrible bill. House and Senate to have now until midnight tomorrow to pass a bill and send it to President Biden for his signature. If there is no deal by then, a partial shutdown would begin, which includes employee furloughs. And we should say one job that could be in jeopardy. House Speaker, the Republican, or I should say the rebellion potentially of Republicans, could threaten Speaker Johnson's chance of being reelected to his position January 3rd. A lot of pushback, both over, for something that's supposed to be a temporary measure, giving yourself a permanent raise, for example.
They haven't had a raise in 14 years.
Sure, but I'm just saying, if you're gonna give yourself a big raise,
they've been doing a heck of a job, though. I mean,
clearly,
it's pay for performance.
Pay for performance, going up to about $243,000 a year is what they, from I think about 187, something in there, was the range. But also, I mean, look, if you're going to pay for the Commanders stadium, I mean, there were so many things in pork.
Well, by the way, that's the normal way of doing business, and sure, I think this is a message that the normal way of doing business is not going to happen anymore.
And that's going to be very, very interesting, right?
There were billions in there. It's like more billions, and I know, to get another trillion takes 1,000 billion, so we got plenty of leeway. But every little bit, I think, does matter. We tried to get a lot of different House people on today.
I know.
So for some reason,
and the ones we had canceled.
No one wants to talk. We finally got.
But I mean, it is a little. I think House Speaker Johnson, obviously, who is close to the president-elect and who has supported him for a long time in the past, got caught off guard by this. So
maybe,
this is
he shouldn't.
Nobody knows exactly what's happening. But he said yesterday, House Speaker Johnson said at one point that he was not only trying to reach out to President-elect Trump, but he was texting back and forth with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy too. So there's a lot of people he's in.
Saying stop posting on X. What was he saying?
No, I think he was saying like what looks like the plan. What should we do? I don't think they had a backup plan.
I mean, we were giving him. He's had some leeway, and he's gotten away with getting some Democrat votes to get what he wanted in the past. Sooner or later, that might not work. Yesterday, we were thinking, okay, he's going to get some Democrats, but then I saw Schumer. Schumer loved the deal.
But this CR is a sound and bipartisan and necessary compromise that will keep the government open and deliver many, many good things for the American people. So now, time is of the essence. The sooner Congress acts, the better. If we want to avoid an unnecessary government shutdown right before Christmas, Republicans must work with Democrats to pass this CR quickly.
When you see Schumer just saying how great it is, we got everything we want, there's Republicans that are going to hear that and say, well, if Schumer's saying we got everything we want, then we definitely don't like this. I mean, there were no cuts in it. Now they just want a clean bill, and Democrats are saying no. A clean bill would mean there's cuts.
But it's not just a clean bill that they're looking for. They're also looking to raise the debt ceiling and do it on the watch of President Biden versus incoming President Trump.
Right.
And that's going to be a heavy lift too. But look, you're not going to get a single Democratic vote. The question is, can President Trump or President-elect Trump make sure that every Republican votes on this? He said last night on Truth Social that anybody who doesn't vote for this will be primaried. And so that's going to be the test.
But all in all, we've been saying it ever since the election.
Votes for this, I don't even know what this is. They don't have it this yet.
If you're 22 times earnings and you're talking about tariffs and cuts and all kinds of stuff.
And no more Fed cuts.
Yeah, it may be, there may be what you worried about if DOGE is going to do all that. What Elon talked about, there may be some pain near term. Yeah. May not be clear sailing. But then again, maybe you don't want to have a Keynesian sort of a sugar high that maybe we've been in.
Well, buckle up. It's going to be interesting. In the meantime, TikTok has a court date. The Supreme Court will consider whether a law that would effectively ban TikTok is constitutional. The court will hear oral arguments on January 10th. The U.S. ban on TikTok is set to take effect on January 19th. I don't know if they'd get a hearing before they...
They're banning TikTok?
TikTok, sorry.
TikTok, no, but that would be a big...
TikTok.
That would hurt a lot of people. That would ruin a lot of people's days if they banned...
Tiny little mints.
Yeah, but they freshen a lot of people's breath.
TikTok.
But that's good. I never thought of that.
I'm still
trying to get my mouth back.
RFK may look at what's in a Tic Tac and decide that it's no good for
That's a beautiful white color. And the cinnamon ones are really red of the Tic Tacs, right?
Really hot.
And hot. Really hot. That's hot.
Hot.
You know, Paris might be coming on.
That's hot, baby.
That would be hot. With her mom, who I guess...
Really? Are you serious?
I am serious.
Wow.
But she's a big deal. Penelope said she's
Kathy
going to...
Hilton and Paris.
No, the mom.
Yeah.
Penelope said, I got a lot of questions for you. You're going to... Because she's on Real Housewives. Did you know that? Of Beverly Hills.
I did not know that.
You didn't know that?
I didn't know that.
I was aware of it, but I haven't seen it.
Anyway, I'm going to have a lot of questions.
Good.
It's a lot of things.
You got to practice.
Those women, they don't just always get along. It's kind of like around here.
Not manufactured here either.
Cheese will be next.
Up next on Squawk Pod, the sudden drama in Congress as the government funding deadline looms, and there's no plan B. We talk to a Republican lawmaker set to chair a new DOGE caucus, supportive of Elon Musk's advising of D.C. operations, if they can get there.
So let's say they don't take you up on it and the government shuts down. Who's going to be blamed?
Well, let's get away from blaming.
We can't. It's politics.
This is Squawk Pod.
You're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin, along with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick.
And join us now with the latest on the government funding battle. Congressman Pete Sessions of Texas. He is co-chair of the House DOGE Caucus. Thank you for joining us and and welcome. It's good to see you, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning. It's a delight to be with you.
And it's good to have you on as well. If you have an empathy for what DOGE is going to try to do, I can imagine that maybe you thought there was a little too much pork in the deal that that Speaker Johnson had put together.
Well, without doubt, the American public jumped in as well, President Trump. If you're going to be successful at these year-end deals, they need to be very refined and simple. Winners do things to win. And part of that winning equation is do what you have to do to get across the goal line. We are in a very interesting time where it's not only close, but Speaker Johnson had little room to pivot. And evidently he pivoted with an agreement that was bipartisan. And what that turned into was a fight within not just our own party. As the co-chairman of DOGE, I will tell you that we want to make every single item stand on its own. We are not interested in putting them into a large package. We are not interested in adding to that deliverance right now. And that's what the feeling was that came across, is that Speaker Johnson added things that were extraneous to simply funding the government.
And I guess that winning is different things to different people. Averting a shutdown is probably, in the Speaker's eyes, what he was trying to do in terms of winning. So in his view, that was the way to go about this. What do you think we should do as an alternative to make sure that we do get something accomplished if we have no support or backing from the other side?
It will require us to make it simply what is commonly called a clean CR. A clean CR runs the government. It does the essentials and basics. Yes, there are some things that need to be added. We need to be prepared for the inaugural. We need to probably be prepared, and this is a point that perhaps President Trump made, of doing something about the debt limit. The debt limit is going to require every single Republican to vote for it to pass it. So what we're doing is putting together the package that can pass now. Next year is not necessarily going to be any easier. So we may as well work as the team and take out the things which cause division, and for it to appear to the American people that we are struggling in what we do. We must bring stability. We must bring certainty. And that's part of what DOGE is about in working next year with the president and his administration. Things will be highlighted. We will have the discussion with the American people, and then we'll have an up or down vote on each of those individual items. I think that Speaker Johnson, certainly in the package, brought in many things that were extraneous to that, and that caused the downfall.
Chairman Session, at this point, the Republicans don't control the Senate. So even if something passes through the House, you still have to go through a democratically controlled Senate. How do you do that? Or do you figure that this is just going to be pressure, and you figure if you pass it in the House, then it's going to be the Democrats who own the shutting down the government until the inauguration?
Well, I think if you follow what I think needs to be done, it's a skinny must-do bill where you fund the government, you become prepared for what would be the inauguration, you thank your members, you send a clean CR directly across the hall, they see it for what it is. They too, I'm sure, see a responsibility of stability as we do. The name of the game is to pass the bill and then deal with the president and the new things that happen next year. But you're exactly correct. Evidently, the speaker brought that equation into it, that he was trying to pass a partially Senate bill. We really can't do that in the House. We never really have. We don't pass necessarily bipartisan end-of-year deals. You pass what you can pass, then give it to the other body. Article 1, Section 7 gives us that authority and responsibility.
So let's say they don't take you up on it and the government shuts down. Who's going to be blamed?
Well, let's get away from blame and go to what you've got to pass.
It's politics.
We'll both be blamed. Well, okay, I've been in politics a long time, and we have a responsibility to pass our bill. And a clean CR is one that the American people would understand and could sustain. And a clean CR would be something that even Chuck Schumer would understand. Let them put the things that they would need in the bill, and then let's get together very quickly and compromise. but we have to pass our bill. That's a responsibility that the House of Representatives has.
Do you think it's going to be easier to get everybody on board with the president-elect, breathing down their backs, so to speak?
What I do think is next year we have the authority and responsibility, by being in the majority, that we have to pass that. And that does include a debt limit, which is perhaps the hardest, next to a budget, the hardest vote that's ever taken in Washington, D.C. And we agreed to take the ball where it landed, on the course, and we agreed to make it better. Our point about DOGE is that it brings in the realistic viewpoint that we've got to do two things. Number one, make the government work more effectively. The president has never been more, we've never had a person more prepared to be president. Now, some could argue Jefferson and maybe Washington, but I think Donald Trump has his hand on what it's going to take to give stability and bring the American people and government back in line with expectations of people and the cost element. This government costs too much money. We have government workers sitting at home, a huge number of government workers still at home, and government is not working. So DOGE is government efficiency. We will then gather together, certainly with the outside titans that have a say in this, and we're going to run it through the American people and then hope that we can reduce the cost of government while we make it efficient. So, no, it's not going to get easier. And next year, every single Republican, no matter which body, is going to have to be on board.
You're really good at social media. What a great you put out a shot of you called yourself an early riser. It's 7:30. I think I got up 4 hours ago, Mr. Chairman. So,
you made a mistake and picked on a guy that threw a paper route in the morning. Fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade. I'm also an Eagle Scout. I don't mind getting up early and getting the eggs ready.
I'm retweeting this.
These are characteristics.
I'm retweeting your tweet, and thank you for doing that and helping the cause, and good to have you. That's a good shot. That's one of your
stability for the entire country. You see, you get up every day and give us the viewpoint on stability of a marketplace. We need that too, and I want to congratulate you. We need to be a part of understanding it, and that's where Donald Trump is also. Expect success this next year.
All right, Chairman Sessions, thank you. I'm retweeting this right now. You're going to get a lot of followers. That's all I'm telling you. Thank you.
This would be a good time to remind you to follow Joe on X. He is at Joe Squawk. Send us a line as well. Our handle at Squawk CNBC. Coming up next on Squawk Pod, C-suite whisperer Jeffrey Sonnenfeld of the Yale School of Management. He knows executives may have railed against President-elect Trump at one point, but today they're aligned on one thing.
They're American CEOs that are very patriotic, and they know it's in the nation's interest and the interest of all their stakeholders, especially their shareholders, that this be a very successful president.
You're listening to Squawk Pod.
Up and Andrew, Q.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. Business leaders meeting with President-elect Trump this week in Mar-a-Lago. It includes the CEOs of SoftBank, TikTok, Netflix, and then just last night, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. Joining us right now is Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, the Yale School of Management Senior Associate Dean for Leadership Studies, also a CNBC contributor after putting together a tour de force of a CEO conference yesterday that had everybody from Tim Cook to Albert Bourla to Mark Benioff and so many others. How many people? 200?
We had 200, and it was our 150th CEO summit since we actually launched the concept. As obvious as it was to create a school for the boss, nobody had done this before. Forbes, Fortune, Business Week, the World Economic Forum, Davos was started years later. So we were the first, and we still are the only truly non-commercial educational event. And
so I was there for part of it. Tell me what you think was the biggest surprise for you.
One of them was that they showed up. A number of their boards told them, this is really dangerous. As CEOs are being targeted, you're on playing cards, you're on posters, wanted posters.
And it was literally, by the way, I should say, across the street from where Brian Thompson was shot. physically, literally.
That is absolutely true. I accidentally lied to them. I told them we were 50 paces away from where the murder took place. Turns out we were, as Mayor Adams showed us, we were actually closer than that.
Right.
And
Mayor Adams was there.
Mayor Adams was there. It was a statement of defiance that they were there. They made a strong statement. Several of them changed board meetings. Robert Isom of American Airlines left his board meeting to be with us in part to make that statement that they were not going to be frightened away or intimidated by standing up for leadership and American character and not sort of the endorsements of this populist fringe.
Have they changed their behavior, their security? I mean,
yes, they've dramatically ramped up. It's shocking that these people had only 20% of them had personal security, Becky. I would have thought it was much higher myself. And I'm sure you guys never get any hate mail, but I'm flooded with nutcases. Most of it was depending on what kind of a mud wrestling situation I get in with Joe. I'd hear sometimes more from the right. These days, I'm hearing much more from the left coming after me, so I'm doing something right. I guess you feel the same way if you get criticized by both. But the threats, the death threats, have open postings asking for my assassination, and this is just me. What the CEOs are getting. 3 of them with us yesterday were wearing bulletproof vests domestically. They wear bulletproof vests when they travel internationally. It was shocking that they wore them. One of them bragged he's lost a lot of weight recently, and it wasn't noticeable that he had a puffed up vest on. That's just sitting in a ballroom.
Let me ask you, you do polls throughout the day, which are fascinating because you actually effectively anonymously poll these 200 CEOs about their perspectives on things like taxes, on things like tariffs. You had a fascinating poll that you did on the nomination of RFK Jr., for example, and whether he's a threat to public health, which a majority, I believe, of the CEOs said he was. What were the most interesting findings of those polls to you?
I'm glad you caught that one. The overall theme was looking back. It was the Roaring 20s, lessons from the 1920s, late 1920s for the late 2020s. And it seems like such an obvious theme. I'm surprised nobody's gone for that before. And there are many ways where they felt we're better off than we were then. Income disparity was much worse then than it is now, believe it or not, despite the hand-wringing of many of the populists on this theme. But they were mixed on a lot of issues in Trumponomics. They were slightly favorable to the idea, as Joe will be happy to know, about using tariffs as a bargaining cudgel, about 56%, but that's not a 90%. It still was a mixed vote. RFK, I was surprised, including somebody who'd met with him recently, walked away confused. The 65% thought he's a threat to public health. I think the idea of the tax cuts for domestic manufacturing, they were in favor of it. They thought that, even though some were skeptical as whether or not the entire supply chain has to be domestic to benefit a cut from 22% to 15%, they thought this could stimulate domestic
What did you think of this one?
investment.
Cryptocurrencies are unsupported by any underlying intrinsic value. This was of the CEOs, of the 200 CEOs, 84% effectively said that they believed that they were unsupported by any underlying value. I thought that was shocking.
I thought it was shocking. I had a series of questions to try to tease something out that I didn't have to do because when I asked them, as you know, we had the largest crypto exchange CEO there in the room and several others, Anthony Scaramucci, Fred Thiel, and all these, is I asked how many of them are using crypto for any daily transactions. 100% of them said zero. I said, have you ever? 100% of them said zero. And then I thought, well, I could skip all the frequency questions. Right. Nobody's using it. And they said I asked them, is it a meme stock? And most of them said yes.
What do you make of all of the trips? We were just talking about Jeff Bezos being down at Mar-a-Lago, and we talked about the number of CEOs that have made their way down there. What do you make of those trips? How different is that historically, or is it?
That's a really great question. In 2016, the strong GOP support that always came from the business community came to a halt. We've studied, going back just to Fortune 100, not Fortune 5, Fortune 100, is roughly half of them going back to Abraham Lincoln, whether or not it was Taft or Reagan or Ford or, unsuccessful candidates like McCain, Mitt Romney, they already had about half of the U.S. business community of the major companies were out vocally and financially working hard on the campaigns. It hit a wall in 2016. It went to zero. There were 2 in 2020, and this time until the horrific assassination attempt that brought Elon Musk out on President Trump's life. There became 1, and that's quite a change. However, every other time, especially in 2017, I brought President Trump, then he wasn't president, into one of our CEO forums before he won, and the major CEOs, who many of them are mostly still in office now, said if he walks in the room at the Waldorf, we're walking out. And guess what? He walked in, they walked out, and then he had me over to Trump Tower right afterwards, because part of it was showing me that they're all coming by here now, because they did come by in early 2017, and the same reason they're rallying now, Andrew, is regardless of how they felt in the campaign, they're American CEOs that are very patriotic, and they know it's in the nation's interest and the interest of all their stakeholders, especially their shareholders, that this be a very successful president. So they want Trump to succeed, and they want to talk with him. A few of the CEOs who didn't want to go down the Mar-a-Lago, I was surprised, were saying they're very supportive of those who did, even though they wouldn't. They thought it was hypocritical to criticize them.
Why do you think that so many CEOs were so out of touch with all their customers and the American public to where you lose both houses, you win the popular vote, you win all 7 swing states? So you've got these CEOs who you say, and I'm looking at a previous time you were on CNBC where you said there's zero support. This was just a month ago. Zero support for Trump with the CEOs.
The major CEOs,
right?
Small businesses.
So they're that out of touch with the American public for him to win 312 electoral votes, Jeff, or maybe you misinterpreted what they're saying. Maybe
Joe, I congratulate him. I congratulated him directly.
That's not what I was asking. I'm just saying, were they that out of touch with the American public? These CEOs they're so different, they're so virtuous that they could see how bad a guy Trump was, but the rest of the American public could not.
What you have is it was a clear sweeping victory, not a landslide, a sweeping victory. We're talking about 1% to 1.5%. That was the swing vote in those swing states, and so it was very close in each of these elections. But it is a decisive win because it is across all those categories.
But
so you give them that.
Without exception, CEOs were against Trump, and now they're only with him because he won. You don't think any of them secretly really want him to win for corporate tax rates, or they love that there's not going to be as much regulation. They love that there's...
No, they're not investing differently on the tax rates, as a matter of fact. Okay. Most of them don't believe...
But they didn't like any of his... They like Kamala's policies?
Not a single company in the room thinks they're going to benefit because they don't... the tax rates unfurl the way they're talked about now, about domestic supply...
They were willing to accept all of Kamala's shortcomings just because Trump was had bad character quality?
They believe that, as even Steve Moore from the Heritage Foundation agreed with the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors with us yesterday, Jared Bernstein, that this is perhaps the best economy in American history, and a gilded economy is being handed to President Trump. Nobody disputed that. The fact that there are some creeping inflation issues coming back in, you were talking about earlier with Steve and the Fed. That's a concern. But what we have is the deficit was cut by 2/3. It tripled under Trump. We have the lowest unemployment.
Jeff, the deficit's being cut from the pandemic levels, where the deficit is still double what it was pre-pandemic. So it hasn't been cut.
It was cut by 2/3, and it
cut by 2/3.
Okay,
from the pandemic
under
levels,
Trump, before the pandemic, it tripled under Trump.
Up to 900.
But the point
billion.
is,
it's $2 trillion now.
But it's a great economy, and unemployment hasn't been this low since you and I were watching.
But none of this has anything to do with what the point I was making.
And inflation coming down. Every country had inflation in the developed world higher than average.
Would you say there's a lot of CEOs that are very excited about the prospects for the deregulation, for DOGE, and for...
Yes, all of those things, but they're probably also nervous about getting targeted on X if they do something that he doesn't like.
They are definitely worried about being, it happened when Harley Davidson...
Jeff, I think that whole narrative was false.
When you had Matt Levitt here, and you've featured him well when he was at Harley Davidson, he was trying to stay out of politics, and the retaliatory trade barriers that he got, Harley Davidson 100% at that time made in the U.S. He couldn't ship bikes into Europe because the retaliation in Europe against the trade tariffs, the Trump trade tariffs. So he had to shut down a plant in Kansas City and open one in Thailand to get product into Europe. What did President Trump then do? He told everybody, don't buy Harley. Harley is the logo is the American Eagle. It was such an American
there was a sea change in Silicon Valley with guys like Musk, and then there was Ackman, and then there was across the board. And I think you kind of missed that entire trend beforehand.
That you had the wilting effect of something called the sleeper effect.
The election must have been a shocker for you after what?
No, we always said it was going to be close. Nobody said that it wasn't that
close.
It was 1.5%.
It was very close.
It was 7. He won Michigan. He won Wisconsin.
1.5%.
He won the popular vote.
I understand these things, but it was by 1.5%.
I know.
But the bigger issue that I just wanted to raise was this issue around Mar-a-Lago. Most of the CEOs who are going down there are saying to themselves, you know what? A, I'm not going to worry till I have to worry. And B, I want to try to support the country. And C, there is no downside in me trying to create a relationship now, given the situation,
my only point is
hoping that maybe it helps later down the road when tariffs do come and maybe they want to get a carve-out or whatnot. That's what's going on here.
So they have company-specific issues, you're right, Andrew, for their shareholders. And they also want to lobby, especially the pharma companies, want to try to bring science in and superstition out. So it's in the public health interest, too. And they're patriotic. They want to support President Trump because he won.
In terms of policies, it wasn't even close for a business owner for who you would want to win. That's my only point. And you can do the character issue and the rape, insurrection, all the January 6th. You can do all that. But Trump's policies for business, you can make a case.
They believe in the independence of the Fed.
And once again, you miss the mood of the entire American populace.
The independence of the Fed.
But Joe, the idea that you miss the mood of the entire American populace,
you were totally,
that is actually
you're
inaccurate.
set up on the wrong side.
No, because the truth is because it was half the country. And 1.5% distinction.
And down ballot, state houses.
7 swing states.
Let's just be straight.
The popular vote. 312 electoral vote. The first Republican to win the popular vote since Bush.
The distinction is the elites.
Jeff's
it's 100. To the elites.
Okay. I think a lot of CEOs are very happy with the
down
outcome.
ballot, the Democrats beat out the Republicans overwhelming in down ballots at the state level. So there are wins and losses. And the important thing is the CEOs are not being paradoxical. They're being patriotic. And I salute them for trying to help make the Trump presidency a successful one too. That is their goal. That's the national agenda right now. Is how can President Trump succeed, and how can the CEO business community help? It's a win-win for shareholders and the
Jeff Sonnenfeld, thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Great to see you.
It's all trending for me, but recent discussions among U.S. representatives and Rand Paul have brought forth the idea of Elon Musk replacing Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House.
Apparently, you don't have to be a member of Congress to be Speaker of the House.
Well, there you have it, folks. As the world turns.
It's a stomach turn.
And that is the pod for today. Thanks for listening. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern to get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears. Please follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.